Beneath the sun, we have so many plays and actors and acting that takes place that it can be really remarkably easy to forget that there is a real life going on. There's real people here, and there's real stories, and there's real ideas in real people's lives, What is it that defines reality, right? We exist with the constant awareness of the numbers of time. And it becomes easy when you're so focused on the number, just like with some kind of financial or monetary reflection versus the essence of what we're doing. I think with time, it's no different. We have the essence of time and on the board and the numbers we have to. I'm no exception. However, I'm an exception to myself in that I'm, just choosing to make sure I'm aware, make a choice, but not an exception to the constant bombarding we all have to letters, numbers, ideas, thoughts. And today I'm making a very great intention to explore the possibility that goes beyond the number, to explore the possibility that goes beyond the thought, to explore the possibility that the sun rises, the sun sets, and within this game we created, there is a real life game going on in our souls. And you don't have to neglect either. That's one of the things that I'm focusing on now really a lot is you don't have to neglect the night to make the day, just bring in the sun. So today let's bring in the sun, and it has different forms. For you, that might be setting a really big boundary for yourself. For me, it might be just really respecting myself and loving myself. I had a hard time loving myself growing up. So now I have an exceptional, beautiful time, really holding myself and loving myself. So what is it that makes us aware? When you wake up in the morning, are you really living? Are you awake? Or when you wake up in the morning and choose to be grateful and to be yourself and to choose that, and then it becomes a matter of nature. Let's look at what's possible. What could we become if we never put a limit on how and who and what? Look at the triangle. The triangle is known for its representation of equality, balance, and inner tranquility. And if you look at a triangle, geometrically it looks like half of a square. However, it's not the same thing. It's really the divided of a square, divided two. So sometimes we have to divide the things that are logical into more intrinsic pieces to solve the puzzles. It's not just here, this fits here. Sometimes it's hey, this fits, you have to transform the puzzle piece sometimes. So that's my goal, total transformation. Not to expect, not expect, rather to present the best option for myself through consistent action, discipline. And that looks like self-love. That looks like self-encouragement. It looks like self-silence sometimes. You gotta find the triangle. The triangle exists within the logic. It's not that it's like the circle is beyond and within. I think the triangle represents the focal point, 3 points. And you think about the idea of a trinity and a mind, a body, and a soul, or water, the ice, the liquid, and then the vapor. Or we look at even within your own mind, your conscious, subconscious, and then your superconscious. So, I really feel like connecting the dots. Sometimes you don't just find the puzzle piece to fit. Sometimes you transform the puzzle by transforming the puzzle piece. So this is my mission today. Exploring the possibility, exploring the sun. I get up in the morning and keeps going. The sun, we don't feel is wavering or is non-confidence, because that would be detrimental. And our soul's non-confidence will be the same thing. Remain in who you are, transform who you are, realize who you are, create who you are, inspire who you are. Even if there's no other people on the earth with you today, why not look in the mirror and say, hey, I love you. Hey, you're the greatest. Hey, you're the most successful, blessed, lovely, attractive, handsome, acknowledged within yourself, detached from the need attached to the creative one, attached to the creative non-one, attached to the creative unconscious, non-attached to anything, attached to everything that represents your highest choice, realizing everything that represents your highest good, in love with yourself, in love with an ability to love and appreciate others transparently, encouraged by time, not discouraged by its passing, enriched by the timeless, not formed or bound by time, in love with the idea, but also in love with the actions that pursue the idea, in love with the pain and in love with the growth, in love with the rain, in love with the shine, in love with the fairy tale, in love with the reality here and how that fairy tale affects people's lives, in love with the mind, in love with the heart, in love with and in aligning with your highest ideal, realizing the low points that you think are not ideal, in love with the faith, in love with the doubt that's not doubt but is the strengthening of your faith and your soul, in love with fucking up, in love with fucking up, in love with the adjustments after you fuck up, in love with a woman that one day you'll be able to fully invest yourself into, in love with the idea of that maybe not happening, you still loving yourself. These are the types of conversations we need to have with ourselves, because I'm looking at myself right now. I'm just going to keep going with what I'm doing. In love with the sun, in love with the moon, in love with lightning, in love with the barren season, in love with the rain, in love with the, with the silence, in love with the fullness of sound. Silence is like the fullness of sound. It's not just the abstraction of sound, as is often presented. In love with the dance, in love with the quiet, in love with the mouse, in love with the cat, in love with the hunting and searching of life, in love with the accepting and attracting of life, in love with the duality, in love with the contrasting boundaries in duality, in love with the idea of a supreme choice, in love with the idea of walking the line, in love with the idea of embracing an idea that no one understands, in love with the idea of embracing ideas sometimes people will understand, in love with the idea of learning, in love with the idea of atoning through understanding of choice, not through sacrifice, in love with the understanding and necessity of responsibility and sacrifice, in love with the necessity of wisdom, in love with the necessity of foolishness, in love with the necessity of time, in love with the necessity of the timeless always, in love with the necessity of the mother, the great mother in love, in love with the necessity of the great father, hatred towards what is not, love towards what is not, hatred towards the false, love towards the real, in love with the real, in love with the truth, and in love with hatred and its necessary role in the development of immature mind, and that I'm evolving, in love with evolution, in love with transformation, in love with the idea and paradigm of set, which reflects and represents the complete chaotic change. In love with the idea of Thoth Hermes, which represents the idea of complete transformative wisdom. In love with the idea of night, in love with the idea of day, in love with the idea of stasis and inner tranquility, in love with the idea of complete transformation and inner revolution, in love with the idea of accountability for things I'm not responsible for, in love with the idea of radical responsibility and humility and accountability for all the things I can control within myself, in love for the boundaries, in love for the opportunity to create boundaries, in love for the opportunity to honor them, in love with the opportunity to express dissatisfaction with what doesn't represent me, in love with the idea of strength and not needing to be this or that, in love with the idea of being crazy, in love with the idea of that craziness being brilliance that evolves my soul, in love with the idea of getting off this live.